The Battlefield 6 open beta dropped late last night, so I jumped in alongside a staggering 334,549 peak players in the last 24 hours, and I wanted to give my first impressions. And that amount of players is crazy considering it's early access, so you have to have a code to get in. I would imagine over the weekend it's going to grow even larger than that. So I've been a lifelong Battlefield player, and the last few iterations have somewhat been duds, at least for my taste, but the excitement around Battlefield 6 is at an all-time high, and I believe it is for good reason. So let's jump into my first impressions playing the Battlefield 6 open beta. So I want to try and structure this and talk a little bit about all the different things we got to try out in the open beta. So the maps right now, and this could very well change next week because there's another beta happening, we get to play 3 different maps. So one on Gibraltar, one on Tajikistan, and Siege of Cairo. All 3 maps offer a variety of gameplay, with Tajikistan also having air vehicles. The maps are overall very enjoyable, with a nice mix of infantry gameplay with vehicles that roam the map and can absolutely decimate buildings. And I have to say, I'm pretty impressed with what we've gotten to play so far in terms of maps. The amount of detail, the ambiance, and overall immersion they offer, even though it can be a bit much sometimes with how many explosions are happening and buildings just collapsing everywhere, it is a blast. Siege of Cairo also potentially needs some lighting adjustments, as it is so bright in certain areas that it is difficult to see enemies, but that isn't a very big deal. I'm overall very enthusiastic about the maps that will be on offer with the full release, especially Operation Firestorm. I know it's a remake, but you know, good old classic nostalgia hitting us. We want to play that Operation Firestorm from the good old days. We also get to play a few different game modes. So we have Conquest with locked weapons across classes. We have Breakthrough, which is kind of like an operations, but only on a single map. And then we also have Domination. So you get a nice mix of vehicle-heavy gameplay, and then a little bit less vehicles, and then just pure infantry gameplay with Domination. So there's a little bit of everything for everyone. The gunplay is satisfying and punchy. Weapons, even though there aren't a ton in the beta, vary a lot in how they function. Some slight tweaks here and there to the weapon-to-weapon balance is surely needed, but it feels very solid as a whole, and you can definitely tell they pretty much redid the weapon mechanics from the ground up. My personal favorites are the SMGs and LMGs provided to the engineer and support respectively, unless you play the Conquest mode that offers unlocked weapons across all classes, which is an interesting idea in and of itself. This basically gives players the freedom to use any weapon on any class, kind of how it was in Battlefield 2042. I personally wasn't too much of a fan of unlocked weapons among all classes, as it somewhat takes away the class identity, but then again, when 2042 released, there weren't really any classes, so I can see why they didn't restrict certain weapons to certain operators. It just didn't make sense in the context of that game at the time. I'll probably do a deep dive on locked versus unlocked weapons in the near future, but it is still great that we can currently test out both. I just don't have a clue on whether this will be a mainstay when the full game launches, or if they're just testing it out and see what players prefer. But it's great that they're actually doing it on such a large-scale test, as opposed to these mostly closed environments like labs and stuff like that, where there's a lot less player feedback, a lot less variety of people getting into it, as opposed to it like an open beta, which just everybody's going to play to figure out if they want to buy the game or not. Moving on to performance, it blew me away considering the amount of detail they have on the maps, the volumetric fog, the particles out the wazoo, the destruction. It runs really, really nice. Now I have a pretty decent rig. I'm running a 5800 X3D with an RTX 4080 Super, and I managed to get roughly 200 frames per second on 1440p. I do however play on low to get the maximum amount of frames to get every competitive advantage I can get, as I somewhat need them at my age, because I'm not in my prime at all anymore. There were a few instances here and there where the game felt somewhat unsmooth, but I believe that was mostly due to server performance, as the servers were more than likely getting taxed, and I could definitely feel it during some matches this morning where your character model would just slide around the map. You were getting killed behind cover and stuff like that. But I doubt this will be a concern on release, at least I hope not. They really did a pretty good job at optimizing the game performance, especially with that amount of detail, and fingers crossed that they get all the server stuff and netcode and networking things figured out for the full release, because I don't think it's a secret to anybody that there have been a lot of Battlefield games that have released with very poor netcode, and it really just resulted in a pretty frustrating experience. Moving on to movement, which sounds really dumb, it feels much more grounded than the previous title. They added inertia to really give the feeling that your character has weight to them and you can't just stop and go on a dime, and I think it's a welcome change. It's somewhat jarring at first, but I got used to it pretty quickly. You can also crouch slide, which I'm personally not a fan of, but this seems to be a staple in most first-person shooter games nowadays, so it is what it is. They also added back the crouch running from Battlefield 5, which is a nice to have, as well as tactical rolling when falling off non-lethal heights, which can somewhat be disorienting, but you do take less damage than you would if you didn't do the roll. As with weapons, I believe some tweaks are needed here and there, especially for their parachute, as it basically feels like a jetpack, but from what I understand, this is like a miscalculation with the acceleration of it or something of the sort. I'm not 100% on this. I don't really understand what's actually happening, but yeah, you could jump off of like a HESCO barrier or two and just glide halfway throughout the map because of how fast you accelerate when you deploy the chute. It is pretty funny, don't get me wrong, but it just feels a little bit goofy. But overall, it feels much more boots on the ground, for as much as I hate that term and it's been used to death. Yeah, that's how it is in Battlefield 6. It feels very, very immersive in how you move, and you really feel like you're in the game. And yeah, it's just an absolute blast. Vehicles are absolutely phenomenal in feel. The sound that a Bradley makes when it starts accelerating, you feel as though you're driving and in an absolutely massive war machine, and it's just fantastic. And to be fair, they are massive war machines and they should feel as though they are really heavy. They have these massive engines that just rumble and make everything around them vibrate. It feels fantastic. And I was streaming this morning and people were just saying, man, the vehicles sound absolutely amazing. They feel like they have power to them. They feel chunky. And yeah, it's just, you have to experience it for yourself with a good pair of headphones. I promise you will not be disappointed. They feel pretty powerful, but they can be easily taken out by a coordinated squad. Now, I unfortunately didn't play in any air vehicles because when it comes to flying, I'm basically as useful as a lobotomized monkey wearing eye covering, so I'll let other people cover that part of the game because it's really not my cup of tea. I've never really been into flying in Battlefield games. I know it's unfortunate. I should probably learn at some point, but yeah, it's a fault of mine. Moving on to the UI, so this was probably my biggest gripe with the open beta, and this might be me being extremely nitpicky. I felt like there are definitely too many menus and clicks to get to specific sections of the settings, and hell, even for weapon modifications, it felt somewhat tedious to go and get to where you wanted to go to actually change a modification on a weapon. Yeah, it just felt all very convoluted. The settings menu were also confusing, with the same options being found under multiple sub-menus, so when you're going through your settings and changing them all, sometimes you'll get to another one and you're like, wait, did I already change this or not? It just feels very confusing for no reason. I also found there was lacking in HUD customization options, albeit in Battlefield 4 we were pretty spoiled. But I hope that someday we can get back to that amount of customization, allowing players to really tailor the HUD to how they see fit. Now, don't get me wrong, UI and UX are very difficult things to get correctly. Fingers crossed they are improved for the release. It also may be a moot point, as the build we are playing now could already be a few months old. Who knows, really? Moving on to long-awaited features to be added into Battlefield title or being added back, there are a lot of things to be excited about. Here are a few that I was excited and thoroughly enthused that they added in Battlefield 6. Hitching a ride on the back of a tank because the vehicle is full is just awesome. It really adds to the overall feel that you're in a war where you can just hang on, don't move, I'll just grab onto the back of a tank and hitch a ride to the next flag. It just feels very cool. Dragging down teammates and squad mates. So we've seen this in some other games like BattleBit Remastered, which did it, about 2 years ago now. It was promised in Battlefield 5, they never delivered on it, and it feels like a feature that is, pretty much a must in a combined arms game where you can revive teammates and stuff like that. You don't really want to revive them in the middle of a street or in the middle of a zone where they might get killed again. So having the ability to drag them and revive them at the same time is just Chef's kiss. It is so fun and such a good feature and a nice thing to have in the game. Grabbing health directly from a support player without them needing to throw their pack and begging for health is awesome. The ability to change kits shortly after spawning in the uncap, because it does spawn you in as soon as the game starts. I'm not a fan of this. I wish you could just spawn whenever you want after you're done like modifying your weapon, but you can change the kit right in the uncap. You can modify your weapon however you want. So that's, kind of like a middle ground between what I prefer and spawning right in and then being stuck with a kit because you were gone to get a bottle of water or whatever. The ability to pick up anyone's kit off the ground after they die, which I really missed after Battlefield 4, because it really allows you to be like, okay, well, my squad mate that's a medic just died. I'll pick up his kit and then revive him, give him health, or revive another person that had just died in front of you. It just allows for a lot more tactical gameplay-ish. It might seem a little bit ridiculous to do that, like pick up somebody else's kit and weapon, but it's also great because if you're running low on ammo, then you just killed an enemy that just spawned or something like that, you can potentially pick up their kit and then keep the kill streaks going. So it just adds, in my opinion, to the overall enjoyment of the game. We have squad management with the ability to create your own squad, delegate the squad leader. It's just, we need this in a Battlefield title. We didn't have it in the past one at launch. I don't know if they ever added it or not. I haven't played 2042 in a long time. It just wasn't my cup of tea. But squad management is like a staple feature in a Battlefield game, and we have it once again. We also have actual classes, so back to the basics of assault, engineer, support, and recon, all of which have their own set of gadgets, and all of which with whom you need to construct a nice cohesive squad to get shit done. It feels as though you need to coordinate with your team, with your squad, and that is what you want from a team-based combined arms game like Battlefield, and it's just awesome. We also have an actual scoreboard allowing you to see such things as ping, kills, deaths, assists, all on an individual basis instead of having it all grouped together as a squad. So that is just, again, a given. That is back. Limited ammo for vehicles, giving infantry some room to breathe instead of constantly being bombarded by every ordnance known to man. So it's really nice. I didn't really notice it at first because I didn't play much in vehicles when I was streaming this morning. But then Fiddy mentioned that, oh, I'm running low on ammo. I have to go resupply my Bradley. I was like, wait, did they actually add limited amount of ammo for vehicles? That's awesome. If I remember correctly, they had this in Battlefield 5. And yeah, it just makes a lot more sense. It gives infantry players some room to breathe. If a vehicle player is really good, they won't just be able to stay like 99% uptime on the battlefield destroying everybody. They're going to have to go back to a resupply station and get their ammo back up before going back out there. So yeah, I just think it makes a lot of sense, and it really balances everything out without needing to like nerf vehicles into the ground and stuff like that. And I'm probably missing a few here, but I would love to hear what feature really got you saying, damn, that's nice to have, in the comment section down below. Now, to wrap things up, as the video has been going on for far too long already, I think Battlefield is going in a solid direction, and I'm thoroughly pleased with what I've been able to play so far, both in the Battlefield labs as well as the open beta. Again, the game is by no means perfect, but it really gave me the Battlefield moments of older titles where you really have to play as a squad to achieve goals, and it felt very refreshing as opposed to the lone wolf playstyle from the previous entry. You can also tell that the development cycle was far longer for Battlefield 6, as even in labs, the game felt more polished and finished than 2042 was on release, and this gives me great hope for this game. I'm sure we will get more information on all the content that will be included in the game, be it paid or free to play in the coming months leading up to launch. All this being said, I'm definitely picking up the game as I've been having an absolute blast that I can't say I had with 2042, and I can't wait to experience all the content it has to offer on October 10th. So finally, if you have been playing the Battlefield 6 open beta among the more than likely over 500,000 players that have jumped in across all platforms, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, what you liked, what you disliked, and anything in between. I know this video might come off very like, oh, he's such a Battlefield fanboy. It's just that I've been wanting to get back to like the Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4 days of old, even Battlefield Bad Company 2, and this game feels like it's really going back to those older titles, and I'm very pleased with it. But yeah, hit like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.